and welcome. And we're so glad to have your artistry continue in the world.
Thank you.
So
Yeah,
I
it's
know,
good to see you after all this time too.
yes, yes. So you're from Israel, and your career started in 1995. You want to talk a little bit about the work you did there?
Sure. Yeah, 1995 was my first network television credit. I was as a composer, and since then I did a ton of music for television in Israel. Um,
You've done all the
but
original songs and theme songs and things for
theme
shows.
songs, theme music, scores, original songs, original themes, like, basically every type of music that you need for television, I was doing.
Hmm.
I was also directing and writing, but the problem was my first break was as a composer, and then producers knew me as a composer. It was very hard to explain to them that I'm actually a director first. So,
Mm-hmm. And
um,
I want to brag on you a little. You have a famous actress mother, yes?
yeah, yeah, she was a pretty big star in Israel when I was born. She's not a star anymore, but she's a phenomenal actress. She studied with Stella Adler. She's wonderful, and she's in my new film that we're finishing post production on right now.
And what's her name? So we can look
Eddie
for her.
Kaplan.
Yes. Okay, wonderful. And then what brought you to LA in 2002?
I got a scholarship to go to USC for the summer of 2002, and so of course I came. But it was my first visit to the United States, and took sorts of meetings with producers, and realized there's a real potential here that isn't in Israel, and I decided to apply for a work visa. This tangled into a bizarre, um, delayed, intensely delayed process, that's basically I got stuck here for so long that I just for now stay.
That's
Fortunately,
wonderful.
this mess is resolved now, but it was a very long time of dealing with it.
You were very tenacious with that, but I know you formed two different companies, Fable Entertainment. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, Fable Entertainment is a content and production company, film, theater, music, and uh, probably television in the future.
Hmm.
Um, and while I
What
was
capacity are you in those different genres?
well, I'm a screenwriter. I'm a director, both for film and for stage. I'm a composer of original music. Recently, mostly musical theater. So
Hmm.
there's multiple projects developing right now. And
And you
yeah, and
also have a company, Fable
Fable
Sounds. I'm
Entertainment
sorry.
is Fable Entertainment is holding a portion of Fable Sounds, which is another company I co-founded, which develops virtual instruments, music software.
And you've
Um,
got your those that software is on some incredible shows. If you want to brag on that
yeah,
a little bit.
it's very much at the top of its game in terms of what it does, and it's used on major shows, both film, stage,
Broadway,
and television. Yeah, on Broadway,
major stars. It's
tours.
basically like orchestra, isn't it? Like a virtual orchestra.
Well, yes and no, because there are many virtual orchestras. We decided to focus on the non-orchestral stuff, and that was kind of neglected by other companies. And really, at this point, we're really the only game in town that is in that quality with these instruments in a non-orchestral context. So
Okay.
yeah,
What does that mean in layman's terms for those of us who aren't musical? What is non-orchestral music?
jazz, funk, pop, R&B. There's all the stuff that's not classical. A lot of
Okay.
companies make orchestral, for film scoring, symphonic orchestra, etc. We did saxophones, trumpet, but even trumpet and trombone, not in a classical way of playing and not in a classical way of recording. It's more of a, jazz and funk and pop style
Hmm.
playing, and it's very different. And it was missing, and it's still missing. If we weren't there, it's really there's nothing else that I'm aware of that is nearly in that level of what we were able to do. It was a lot of work, of course, but
Very proud of you. Very proud of you. You've also had a very successful short film, The Babes. It's gone on to win
the
many
babies,
awards.
yeah.
Babies. Uh-huh. You want to tell us a little bit about that? It's won a lot of
Sure,
awards.
yeah, yeah. The babies was made very. rather quickly and on a very, very, very low budget. I mean, the overall cost was $1,500,
Wow.
and
That's amazing.
um, in the beginning, I sent it to several film festivals and nothing happened. And then about a
Typical. That's
year later, almost a year later, we got an award. And I thought,
mm.
oh, okay, what did I do differently?
And
And fine tuning the cover letter and choosing more wisely in terms of where to submit what. Um, and we ended up with 42 awards and 7 nominations for this film.
what is the film about? That's amazing.
Well, I don't want to give away too much because people might want to see it, and there's a lot of turns and twists and big surprises there. So without spoilers, it's about this young woman in a futuristic world who tries to prevent the Population Control Authority from taking her babies away.
Oh, oh, that's sweet. Oh,
But but in reality, it's much more relevant to our lives now, and uh, and not as disconnected as it might sound.
so
And I just don't want to take away, the surprise for somebody who might see it.
sure. So jumping right into that, our topic today is um, talking about the role of the artist in this society, in this turbulent society. We held this show a week because of all the protesting and upheaval in the world, and didn't feel it would be right to just come on and chat about careers without really talking
Right.
about artistry and how
And how we relate to this world. I mean, art has a very important role in our lives. In our lives as artists, of course, but in everybody's lives, whether they realize it or not. Art is, in all of its forms, is one of the most influential things to form people's perceptions. And that's on everything, on their lives, on the world, on defining goals and purposes, defining and assessing values and priorities. Everything is affected by multiple things, but art is one of those very, very influential things in all of its forms: music, uh, film, television, visual arts. It all affects us. It all defines our perceptions, and as a result, um, our experiences of our lives and what we
I
find
think it's
important.
really helping people cope right now. I,
Indeed, yeah.
and what's been great for me is watching all my friends who I'm used to seeing on the stage or auditioning or out working. They're finding ways to get their art out there. So it was fun for me right away. As soon as the pandemic hit, everyone went online, right? Everyone's figuring even this is such an opportunity. I'm so grateful to Stephen for this opportunity and to share all my different friends, pathways. And yours has been I really wanted to have you on fast because I think you're here for a very significant reason. You are the epitome of what is happening right now in the world. And I know, people have looked to art all over the years to define an era. You dig out and say, oh, look at the floor work they dug out of Pompeii, and what are the sculptures and paintings and I think sometimes everyone's struggling as an artist unless you're really really up there big, and yet we all keep going, and that pilot light is lit for a reason. I feel like a purpose, and you weren't you tell us about the song you were writing or
Yeah,
involved with.
that's the thick irony of what happened was
Let's talk
that
about that a minute.
um, so in March the stuff was starting to get
Totally.
serious with the pandemic,
Yeah.
and um, I have a very good friend in Israel who's a lyricist, a very 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 successful lyricist in Israel named Hannah Goldberg, and we've been collaborating since '98, so quite more than 20 years, and we're very good friends. We talk very often, and she had a few songs on their way to be released to the radio, and she felt, what's the point? Nobody's gonna be interested in these songs. It's just not. It's not what's on people's minds. And she was in the post office and looking at people kind of being afraid of each other, and started to scribble this idea for a song. She told me about it, and I said, "Oh, that's a great idea. Let's do something with it." And the idea was to write a lighthearted, upbeat, funny, fun song about Corona, about our situation, and about the whole thing in a way that might help lift people's spirits a little bit and connect to our what is really on our minds right now. And we worked on the finalizing the lyrics for a couple days, and then I composed it, and the next day I recorded it, and literally hours before I became symptomatic with the coronavirus, we were filming the music video for it.
This is so crazy.
So literally, we finished filming, and I went to bed, and when I woke up, I was sick.
And I don't want to go into the whole drama of it, but you were told several times, because it was in the very beginning where people were just being cautioned to stay home. You were told 2 to 3 times by ambulances not to go to the hospital, and that was a really dangerous assessment. You had to fight to go to the hospital when you finally did.
Right. It was. I think it was based on a CDC guidelines, so I can't be completely angry at these people who are operating the ambulance. But in reality, I knew what it was. It was obvious to me.
Mm-hmm. And this was before all the testing was really prevalent.
Right. Mm-hmm. They basically told me that because I had 103 instead of 104 fever, that I don't meet the threshold to be tested.
But the thing is that it went on so long that it eventually became really life-threatening.
So the weird thing, even though it was getting worse, I felt like it was getting better, which was not. It definitely was not. 2 days later, we called them again. I felt like I was dehydrated, even though I was drinking a lot of water. And all they said was to drink Gatorade. That didn't help. No surprise. I eventually decided I can't take the risk of being turned down again, so I walked to an urgent care a block away, and once their doctor saw me, he said, "Oh, you need to be in the hospital right now." I told him, "Can you write it down, please?"
Because you had to hand like a permission slip to the ambulance to make them take you.
And the crazy thing, it was the same ambulance for the 3rd time.
You're the same drivers.
The same people. But now with a note from the doctor, they took me.
But they were telling me even there, like, I don't know.
The whole way there, they were trying to convince me not to go.
And you were on a ventilator pretty quickly once you got to the hospital.
Yeah, a day after I got to the hospital, I was in the ICU. A day after that, I was in the ventilator for 11 days.
Unconscious, yeah. And we were all praying for you. So, had a lot of fun.
I heard.
Yeah.
My experience of it was different than everybody else's. Because
I was very happy that the 30% worked for you. They eventually tried all the different medication, and then they tried the one that worked. I can't pronounce it, but I know it's a good one.
So the one that helped was remdesivir. It was not yet approved at the time for treatment. It was there. I'm not even sure it's approved now, but I participated in a clinical trial. So it was administered by a team from Europe that came to do a clinical trial of remdesivir, and literally
at what hospital? Cedars.
I was at Cedars, but it wasn't this part of the treatment that actually cured it. Was not Cedars. It just happened there. They happened to be there.
Wow. Yeah. And your caregiver made the choice after doing some research that it was okay to go do, because nothing else was working and it had been too long.
Well, because it's not approved by or at least at the time was not approved by the FDA. They called my friend, like you have a designated friend when you're going to the hospital, to make decisions for you, and they asked him, and he researched it very quickly, and he had 2 hours and 20 minutes to get back to them with everything signed. It was 25 pages or so. So I'm very thankful that he was able. He managed to do that while moving. He was in the middle of moving to a new apartment, and and a full-time job. So kudos to him.
We're very grateful to him.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
So
definitely.
coming back with a new lease on life, does it give you more energy? Like, okay, now I'm gonna. I mean, I know you're a go-getter anyway. You're someone who works endlessly and tirelessly, and produces a lot. So, but is there, coming off of something that dramatic, you know, have you gone back into your art full on? What has it done for you?
Um, so I was planning to release that song as soon as possible after I got home, but in reality, I needed to rest for a while.
Hmm.
And there's a recovery period that you know, just for the mere fact that I was lying down for so long, you know. So
Yeah.
there are ramifications to that that take time to recover from.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
um, but it is now I'm almost back to normal, so I'm finally back.
And
Um,
now, would you change any of the lyrics of the COVID song now? The corona
it's already
song.
recorded. I literally just finished the orchestration and mixed it. Last night I finished the first full rough cut of the music video for the Israeli version. It was already released a couple weeks ago on platforms for Israel and to the radio. We got great reviews on the newspaper there.
Oh, great.
Um, and it will be released here a little bit later in English.
Hmm.
It
Where
just
will we be able to hear it?
it's called Her Name Was Corona, and it's
Okay.
pretty funny. And I feel like it's not the right time to release it here right now. Things here are a little bit too grim. In
Hmm.
Israel, it's mostly over, which is why it felt fine. I mean, it's not completely over. They're worried about second wave possibly, but at
Hmm.
this point, it's very well under control there. Here it isn't, so I'm gonna wait for a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're in Los Angeles. I'm in New York, and New Jersey, and we're both in the epicenter of a lot of, you know, the protesting and all of the.
Yeah.
There's just so much going on in the world, and how, we were talking before. I mean, I know friends who are artists have really taken a lot of time, let's say before the protesting and all that started, to really dive into some of the art and to projects and things that have been lingering. But how do you think the general person is utilizing art? Have you been talking to people about how that helps them cope with life during this time?
Well, I'm surrounded by artists,
Hmm.
so
Me too. Yeah.
so it's a little misleading. I mean, we artists are such a disproportionately tiny percentage of population, tiny, 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 tiny.
Hmm.
And
Being in LA, I never think about that because
I'm
everybody's an
saying
artist.
disproportionate because a we tend to surround ourselves with artists, and it makes us it creates this illusion that oh, there's so many artists. No, there aren't.
Hmm.
We're not
Hmm.
even any significant portion of a 1% of the population. It's really negligible in terms of the quantity of people who actually create art. And if you take this into consideration, and you take into consideration how much influence artists have on people's perceptions of their lives, and that's really the situation.
What do you
Uh,
mean by that? What do you their perceptions? What do you mean by that?
our concept of the most fundamental things in life are affected and defined by art. Um, what is
On
beauty?
silly levels
What
like
is
TikTok, like everyone's making their own like TikTok videos and everyone's like posting crazy stuff,
well,
you
not
know.
any video is art. Um, so uh, but and not only videos are art,
Mm-hmm.
but art is a form of philosophy,
Hmm.
is a form of communicating philosophy and exploring philosophy. And philosophy is really the, the way people understand the world and themselves.
I mean,
Uh,
even the tagging of the all the graffiti, you know, I just feel like everyone, this is a time where everyone's really expressing. I mean, there's been so much this everyone being quarantined, and then you know, just that horrible death, you know, it's just a pressure cooker that went, and I just feel like everyone's out expressing as much as they can.
sure, but
Mhm.
expression doesn't necessarily equal art.
Okay, so what
Uh,
equals art to you? What equals
well,
art?
that's a big question. But I will say that actually the point I was trying to make with all this disproportionate effect we have on society around us is that this is a very powerful thing,
Mhm.
and as they say, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think it's really important not to pollute. So a lot of these TikTok stuff that you're talking about, not all, some is great, but a lot of the stuff, a lot of the content that's out there is mere pollution. When we
What do you mean? What do you mean? I was thinking, oh, we're finding all these masks all over everywhere. Everyone's throwing their rubber gloves all over the place, you know.
no,
But
it's
you're talking
mental
about like
pollution.
content. Okay.
It if you do things for the wrong reasons, you're really polluting. Because you do have an effect. You
Like
do
I
have an
can't watch the
influence.
news 24/7. I can't hear all that negative, 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 negative. You know, I want to hear a good story. I want to hear something uplifting,
Exactly.
uplifting on my own energy.
That's why when we did a song for Corona, we went for something uplifting and fun and light because everybody's so stressed out and depressed and frustrated
Worried.
and
I think
scared.
people are worried and angry and fearful and yeah.
Yeah, so we said, okay, let's help people with it. Let's reframe it. Let's make it funny and fun. And well, it's not fun. I was sick with it. It's not fun, but it was
You are
definitely
someone who can say
people.
that.
It was definitely not
No
fun
one
for the
should get
people
mad,
around me.
please.
But but um, but just sitting and worrying is not helping anybody either.
No,
So
it's
if you can help people cope with this and relax and have a little bit of fun at home when they're stuck at home with quarantine, and you know, we created a dance for it, you know, so it's something that was really created to make people's lives better.
I think
And
dance is a cool thing that you just said that because I listen to a lot of podcasts as well, and Dr. Laura came on. She's like, everyone today, I just want you to dance wherever you are. Just take a minute and just dance and just get that energy going. You know, just joy. I think joy is
yeah,
joy. Joy is
yeah,
like
and I asked Soda Percy, who's an actress, but she's also a choreographer, to come up with a dance for it.
mm,
And we worked together to kind of fine tune it. But she came up with a great dance, and I can't wait to share it with everybody.
get up, bust a move. You got a little move in you.
It's great. It's great. And to talk
Okay.
about TikTok, that would be a great TikTok video.
Okay. And what, you know, you're also your brain is so technical too. Like how did you learn so much about cameras? I mean, you're a director, you know, and but so you understand actors very well. I've worked with you. But you're also technically brilliant with your lighting. How did you learn all of this stuff?
Well, I went to film school, and I went to drama department in my even before high school, and film department in high school, but also music departments in various places. So I studied everything I do, but I chose my professions very early on. Talking when I was 3 or 4, I already kind of knew what I wanted to do.
Were you on set a lot with your mom?
My mom was did mostly theater. She,
Mm.
so I was in theaters a lot. My dad is a very successful musician in Israel,
Oh.
a conductor, a music producer, arranger, etc. So
Mm.
I spent a lot of my childhood in recording studios, TV studios, theaters. Yeah, I definitely spent a lot of time seeing people at the top of their games.
Mhm.
Also, one of my mother's best friends was Leonard Bernstein. So every time we came to Israel, which was often,
Mm.
we would spend a lot of time with him, concert rehearsals, dinners, you name it. They were very close friends. We became very good friends. Last time I saw him was in my bar mitzvah. Um, so yeah, you can't spend all this time with people like that, see them work, not just the concert, but the rehearsal, the process, and not learn. It's
You're someone who I think is very much about the process. I know for myself as an actor, I am as well. I mean, people are like, "Don't you want to be famous?" I'm like, "No, I want to work. I want to get out there and find something new that I can utilize to share with people. I want to tell stories. I want to, research stuff, and I find you to be very much the artist that way. I think you dive in 1,000%. What do you think helps you communicate with actors as well as you do?
um,
As a director, what do you think is important?
so I think as a director, and that's also to more fully answer your previous question. Um, I'm a very curious person.
Mm.
Um, I want to understand things. I want to understand the reason for why things are the way they are, um, and figure out ways to make them. Yeah, it's so. I always try to learn about the newest technology because I might be able to utilize it artistically. Um, and that's about cameras and all that and lighting, which I do keep myself very, very, very informed on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Um, Now, the same thing that I utilize for screenwriting um, is what guides me with working with actors, other than studying, which I studied acting, I studied directing, and I never meant to be an actor. I did act in a few things, but when I was asked, but it was never my
mm.
career. Um, but I studied it so that I could direct better, so I could communicate better with actors. Um,
I think that's the top goal is if you understand, the actor's journey is so much uh, it's there's so much prep work, and then you got to get up and throw it all away and then deliver what the director is asking. um, do you find that, I mean, I know you to be a collaborator. If someone has an idea, you'll work it in, but I know you also have a vision, and I think it's that. I mean, I appreciate, the way you're able to kind of merge both. um, and
I
I
think if you
know,
don't merge them, you're missing out. Um,
okay, right. Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing: you have a vision as a director. You have to have a vision. I've seen directors who come into work without the vision. They piss me off. But that, I guess that's valid if it works for them.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a pretty clear idea of what I'm trying to get going on set or into rehearsal on play. But a this is a collaborative medium, both of them, and if you work with creative people, you need to do your thing,
Mm-hmm.
and as long
You
as
have to trust. Yeah.
it's
Mm-hmm.
here's the thing. Um, when you have ideas from a multitude of people who are creative and talented, you're going to get better results than if you're limited to one mind, no matter whose mind it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The role of a vision is not necessarily, oh, this is how it's going to be, this is how you're going to say it, etc. No, that's not a vision. That's over-controlling plan.
Yes.
A vision is what you're trying to explore, what you're trying to say philosophically with it, what kind of texture, what kind of feeling you want to invoke.
Mhm.
um, and then anything that fits within that vision, with the tone, with what you're trying to say, with what you're trying to focus on, is valid. So
Shaping, sort of shaping. I mean, I've had to do my Dietrich thing. I had to kind of go all out there, and then they go here, pull that back, or push that forward. You know, a little
yeah, yeah. So
shaping.
you shape, exactly. You shape it. You fine tune until everything works.
Mhm.
But when the vision is a guide, is it's does it fit? Does it not fit? Is it too much now? Because I'll give an example. There's a screenplay I'm co-writing right now, um, and we initially thought it was going to be a long short, and quickly realized it just doesn't fit in any kind of short form. It needed
Mhm.
longer. It needed to be longer, but the current version is not long enough, so we're kind of stuck in between.
Mm.
And um, I need to expand it without stretching it out, just to add what really contributes anything. Otherwise, I'm just weakening something that is very powerful now.
Mm.
And I had some ideas for new sequences and scenes that seemed really great, but then I ran into a new problem because I don't want to repeat uh, concepts of scenes. There's a character. I thought, oh, she should try to join something that her boyfriend is doing, and be rejected. And she would be rejected based on how the story is structured. But then I thought that will devastate her, and I have 20 minutes later in the film something that devastates her in a much more profound way and more important way, and I don't want to have that devastation happen twice,
Mhm. Mhm.
because I'm wasting that emotion. I'm wasting that. It takes away from the moment when it matters.
So when you're doing all this writing, because I know you write a lot as well, and do you end up taking pieces of something and slotting it in? Oh, hey, we didn't use this for that one, and maybe we can use it here. And do you ever play around like that?
Um, a little bit. The thing that comes into structure, um, and that's, people talk about structure in screenwriting a lot, sometimes too much. But but there are some basics that are very helpful when you go into rewrites, or when you're trying to figure out what fits where. And the idea of separating the script into four about equal parts, uh, and having
Four,
each of
beginning,
these
middle, end,
parts.
and something in the middle. What's the
Yeah,
fourth?
first act, first half of second act, second half of second act, and third act is usually what it's referred to as. And there's a middle point that's kind of elusive but critical to it all, which usually happens
Conflict.
after the
The
middle.
introduction of conflict, right, has to come quickly. Do you think?
Um, well, that's a whole separate thing. Let me just finish about
Okay, sorry.
and then I'll address this conflict thing. But structure can be a great guide, because um, the first feature script that was worked on many years ago, um, there was a part that felt like it was losing energy, and I was trying to figure out why. And then I looked at the four quarters of the story, and what each of these quarters is focusing on, and realized that sequence belonged in a different quarter. I moved that scene a couple of scenes backwards, so it happens a little bit earlier, because it belonged in the second act, not in the third act. It was in the third act, and boom, it worked.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that, yes, I definitely would do. There's also in this the script that I just mentioned, that we're finishing the to expand it to a full feature form. Um, there are elements that we considered, and it didn't really matter where they were as long as they worked. And and then I'm finding where I can add that element in. Cindy, are you there?
I'm here. I just had to plug in my phone. I'm sorry. I thought it was plugged in.
Okay.
It wasn't.
So yeah, I mean, it depends on what it is. Yeah, of course, you might have ideas that you want to fit in, and then you just look for the most effective place to add them.
So as a screenwriter, let's talk to screenwriters out there, because I think writing a screenplay is very difficult. How
Yes.
do you start with a structure? Like, can you give advice for people out there that are, interested in doing it, or are already in the process? Like,
I do. I
mhm.
do. And it has to do with what we're really having this conversation about. Hopefully, we can go back to that, which is write about something that's relevant both to you and to society around you. Um, if you write about something that might be interesting to you right now, but is not relating to the world around you, you're risking creating something that's going to be interesting to you only. And I think, especially with film and television, these are such expensive art forms, that you really need to have an audience to justify all that expense, unless you're independently wealthy and you're willing to put your money on it. You
Which
need
is
to.
never a good idea. Never a good idea. We
Oh
all
no.
end up doing it, but it's not a good idea. OPM,
The,
OPM.
the, the
Other people's money.
the point is, uh, unless you're doing it as a hobby and you just want to enjoy the process, which is very enjoyable sometimes,
Hmm.
or usually, not always, but can be
There's
very
always a lot of drama behind the scenes, no matter what it is. There's usually more drama than what's on stage.
enjoyable.
There's always more.
But I enjoy the process itself, so nobody's going to take away that enjoyment of the actual like work. I love that work, um, regardless of drama. But without drama is fun. Is more fun. It's without drama behind the scenes. I mean, um, but the point is, when you write about something that's relevant, and I'm not necessarily talking about immediate relevancy. I'm not talking about, oh, this happened, let's talk about this, which could work sometimes if you're fast. But films take a long, long time to happen.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
it's more relevant to think about processes in society or things people are dealing with. Some things are universal regardless of the time, just things that people deal with in relationships or with self-image or with, anything that's relevant for people.
So right now, going back to our
Including your art.
original question of what the role is of the artist in this society. I mean, are we here to just reflect? Are we here to try to heal? Are we here to try to unite? I mean, I think all of those things are valid, and also, this is like a revolution that's happening finally, but also
If you're able to share ideas and thoughts in a way that is not telling people what to think, but rather shining a spotlight on a question and maybe sharing your perspective, your point of view. Sharing point of views is a very powerful thing to do, because people, through a story, through emotional connection to a story, um, get to experience somebody else's point of view.
mm,
And that's
in a
really the
safe way.
power of art, in all of its forms: music,
Mhm.
visual arts, dance, theater, musical theater, um, songs, poems, film, television. They're
Mhm.
all doing the same thing
Mhm.
when they're good.
Mhm.
Um, Now, there are a lot of big budget films lately that are more products than art. They're more
Yeah. Mhm.
You know,
All
my
the remakes drive me crazy of like great stuff. Like move on. There's so many scripts. It's like you know, I have a episodic. You have 20 scripts. You know, I mean, everyone's got something new, and they're going back and remaking stuff that was brilliant. Like that drives me crazy.
some of it is unnecessary, to say the least.
It's like the safe way of they think they're going to make money because it made money before, and I don't know. I
The
think there's so much out there that they could take a chance on. You know.
the sad part is that it works. The sad part is,
Mhm. I'm
remember years
stubborn.
ago they said in show business you never know, right?
Mhm.
Not the case anymore. They figured out what works, and the people running the big studios these days are not artists; they are business people.
Which they kind of always have been, right? I mean, you've always, well, I guess like
No, that's
Chaplin
not.
and stuff like that.
It's not.
They were.
No, it's not how it has been. No, not at all. It's a thing that started about 20 years ago. The heads of studios previously were filmmakers. They loved films, or you know, if you're talking about major music labels, which used to be owned by separate companies, but now they're owned by the same companies. Um,
Mm.
they were run by people who cared about music and knew about music. Um, Not anymore. And people seem to care about franchises they're connected to. So a book that they loved, or a movie that they loved, or whatever. If something happens with it, a remake, a prequel, a sequel, even if they heard it's terrible, they want to see what they did to my beloved franchise, and they'll come to the movie and buy the ticket, and
Mhm.
that makes it safe.
Mhm.
It's terrible. I hate it, but I think a lot of people hate it. But until people will start voting with their feet and not buy tickets to these things, they'll keep remaking and do sequels and all that stuff. I really think that Joker was potentially a door to something else, because
Brilliant,
it was a
brilliant, brilliant.
brilliant film. It was an art house film
Hmm.
done under the disguise, you know, under the guise of being a superhero movie, which it is not in any way, shape, or form,
Hmm.
um, which is beautiful. And it was done on a relatively low budget for a studio, but it was done by a studio.
I love that they didn't have all CGI. You know that it was really artist driven. I mean, I
Yeah,
walked out of there crying and saying, okay, I want to act again. You know,
yeah.
so yeah.
It's a beautiful work of art. It really is.
Mm.
Uh, Personally, I thought it was the best movie of the year. The Academy disagreed, I guess, but
Whatever. That's so political. It's so political. Yeah.
um, but it really was a beautiful movie, and it made a lot of money, and that's important because it was made by a studio, and I really think it might open the door uh, to more artistic films again, even on the studio level, like we used to have until, you know, 15, 20 years ago.
Until it all went CGI. I mean, you know, I guess there's a slice for that as well, but not, you know, too much. I
You
don't.
know, a lot of films now use CGI for things you would have never imagined, including, by the way, the one that won the Oscars this year. I don't know if you're aware of it, but Parasite, which is, you know, a comedy drama, doesn't seem to be a visual effects heavy film, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But almost everything you see there that didn't exist.
Like
The
what? What do you
house,
mean? It was
the
in the
house
house.
CGI,
The house.
the
Really?
CGI, yeah, really.
Mm. Mm.
And their little house underneath the, you know, the house they initially start with
Mm-hmm.
was built in a tank, a water tank studio.
Really?
Yeah, so that they could flood it later. So
Oh,
they built the
okay.
whole section of the street with all the stuff, you know, the other houses that they're trying to take the water out of.
Yeah.
This is all built in a tank, in a
Wow.
soundstage that's meant for water scenes. And there's a huge blue screen in the back, and the rest of the street is CGI.
Wait, what's a blue screen versus a green screen?
It's the same thing. It's just blue or green, basically whichever color you want to separate.
Okay.
If you have green in the scene, you don't want green in the background. That's really the main
Okay.
thing. Having
You want to
greenery.
put a grassy lawn. You don't want a blue. Okay, you put blue.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Cool tip.
But even the exterior of the house, only the first floor existed. They put blue screens around the. It's not wasn't even a house. It wasn't-
I just want to say too, for like, I mean, and I'm sure most people are aware that they don't film scenes, you know, in doing a film, and they don't, you know, I mean, it's guide, you know, the guide is a lot of times budget or location, you know, and it's always amazing, you know, the editing of it. Do you sit in on editing things, projects that you've written and directed? Are you active in that?
Yeah, I often edit them myself. I prefer to have an editor. Some editors prefer to work alone, and then they would bring their version, and then we'll sit together and fine tune it, and that's totally fine. But yes, I'm definitely very involved in editing. A lot of the pacing of a scene happens in editing, unless it's a continuous shot, and sometimes even if it's a continuous shot, because again, visual effects are everywhere now, in a lot of places where you don't expect them to be.
No, I
So
know
you
from
can
doing
merge
my
takes.
film work. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You can merge takes. You can do a lot of things today in post production.
I'm amazed at what you can do in post. I'm amazed. And also then how vital a role the music is over it. You can evoke a feeling that maybe the actor didn't get, or the direction didn't get, or the shot just wasn't quite right, but you can make that happen with music. Do you find that as a composer?
Music, sound design, ADR. In the new film I'm finishing post on right now, it's called Invisible Lines. It's actually relating to the Me Too movement and where it sometimes goes wrong, and
Yeah.
kind of a gray area, and the thin line there. Hence the title Invisible Lines. And that's another drama that was extremely heavy on visual effects beyond what people watching it would ever imagine. The music there is going to be very, very important. There was a scene towards the end. It's an outdoor scene. We recorded the sound fine. I had very usable sound there, but it wasn't the right atmosphere. I wanted for that scene something that's more stylized than and less realistic. I mean, it still sounds real, but it's not a dream or anything. But I just wanted it to be almost clinical in sound, and we ADR'd it. There was very, very few lines in it, so it was easy to ADR, and it made a huge difference. Just the quality of the sound of the dialogue could completely change the feeling of a scene.
And sometimes you have to kill the babies, like you said. Sometimes you have to, you know, cut something off that you thought worked to make something work, or you know, I was amazed too. You know, we ended up being an actor in my own film that I wrote. You know, then I sat in the editing room, and we needed a shot of me just looking around, and it ended up something that the camera was rolling. I wasn't aware of it, and I was just hanging out waiting. And we ended up using that in the film. So I think as an actor,
it happens all the time in the babies. By the way, there's a very critical shot that was shot that way. That actually the original sound of it was me giving an actor a direction, and him turning the head to listen to me, and I used that head turn and look as a very powerful moment in the scene. And it's not the first time it happened. It's a really good idea to keep the cameras rolling between takes to a reasonable extent, because you get this gold that in editing just saves you.
what camera are you excited about right now? What are you working with when you're filming?
You know, it depends on the project. Not every camera is right for every project. The film I'm finishing post-production on right now was shot with the Panasonic GH5, which is a really, really great value for the money, and a great tool for filmmaking. But uh, my next project is going to be a feature film, and I am not going to shoot it on this camera because it's not Netflix approved. And at this point, I feel like um, it's my responsibility to make whatever I make as future proof as possible, as easy to market as possible.
Wait, so Netflix has restrictions on cameras you can use? It has to be shot on a blah blah blah.
If you want to sell it as a Netflix original, yes. If you're just,
Oh.
yeah.
Mm.
Um, there's a list on their site, and also within the camera, what settings you have to use for them to approve it. That's
Wow. Okay.
very, very specific. Yeah.
We only have about 10 more minutes left, but I know you help me a lot too. You have tips. You know, there's so many independent filmmakers out there, and sometimes, like you said, wading through the film festival realm, that's something that when you start a film off, if you haven't done it before, you don't really know much about. And you gave some great tips to me about you know, how to go forward. I thought maybe you could share some of that here with our listeners.
Well, first of all, I hope film festivals can come back to screening films. Right now, they don't really do that. They stream them online, but I really stopped submitting right now until things go back to a more active actual screening because I just don't see the point. But as I mentioned, it's choose festivals that are appropriate for your film, and each film is different. Um, Start with the film festivals that require premiere status, because not all of them do, and the ones that do, if you already submit, if you already screened anywhere else, they're not going to accept you. And give a little bit of a taste of what the film is about, in essence, in the cover letter, which is not necessarily the log line. It more philosophically what it's about, or why is it relevant socially, etc. These things really help in programming later because programmers can see, oh, that could be interesting. And
Also, you had mentioned something to me about getting, you know, maybe starting a film off with trying to have it win some awards and things so that you have some laurels on your submissions so that when you go into a bigger, more highly, I made the mistake of trying the highest prestigious ones first instead of maybe coming down and trying to win
well,
some of the smaller ones.
that's not necessarily a mistake, because the problem with some of the competitions is that they call themselves a film festival, and then it's considered um, to basically as if your premiere status is already gone, and then the big ones will not want it.
Mm, mm.
So yeah, it's difficult with the big ones. It's very, very difficult with the big ones. And many of them, many festivals just prefer to have films, even short films, with name actors because or name filmmakers, because that's gonna bring more audience.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yuval, where can we find your work? I know we have a few more minutes and sometimes it cuts us off soon. So,
well, I
tell
guess
us.
the easiest way to find a lot of things, including how to contact me if you need to, is on my website. It's yuvalshrem.com, yuvalshrem.com. And then there's links from there to each has its own either page or website that you can find more on. The Babies is not currently available publicly because there was the film festival circuit, and then now we're probably going to get a distribution with all these awards. But you can get the trailer and some clips and eventually information on where to find it on thebabiesmovie.com. And yeah, there's really an enormous amount of stuff that's happening right now.
So is there anything else you want to say about your role?
When production can go back into action, then there will be more new things that I could recommend.
Well, I know you're a great collaborator, and I know you're still here for a reason. And you've really been an inspiration to me, and I know you give a lot of opportunities for the artists that are around you. You're kind of a one man shop. You could do it all, and I think that that's a brilliant place to come from, understanding everyone's role hitting it from so many different angles. I just think it's amazing. So your role as an artist in this turbulent community, what are you looking forward to?
As I said, I try to focus on projects that can either bring joy to people or make them think about things in a new way that hopefully, help make people's lives better. That's really, I find, is my role as an artist. I take it seriously, but not so seriously that there's no humor. Humor is super important in life, and in a way, the heavier the subject matter, the sadder the story, the more intense the story is that you're telling, the more important the humor in it is for it to be, consumable, for it to be effective. And to answer your very quickly your question about conflict in stories and screenplays and in drama, conflict is one form of suspense, but suspense is really what you need.
Love that. Okay. Okay.
As long as you have suspense, you have the audience. Conflict is just one form of suspense. There are other forms of suspense, and they're all effective.
Okay. What's another form? I don't know. I'm trying to think. Like what?
If you're trying to find out what's going on, if you're worried about what might happen, as long as you want to know what's happened next, and you care, then you're onto something. If people don't care, that's a big problem. If they already know what's going to happen, they don't care. So it's suspense that's really your best friend with telling stories, on all of its forms. Suspense could be in comedy, suspense could be in drama, suspense obviously could be in suspense thrillers, but as long as people are trying to figure out what's happening and are able to, at least slowly but surely, they're on. They're in. They care, they're engaged, and they're entertained. And even
and
if
give
you
us
have
your
something
website one more
important
time.
to tell people, you have to entertain them first. You have to grab their attention and keep their attention.
Yes, yes. Give us your website one more time, Yuval.
It's yuvalshrem.com. YUVALSHREM.com.
Fabulous, fabulous. And I know everyone's going to ask, and I know the answer already. You don't know how you got the COVID.
I have no idea. I was very careful. I don't know when I got it, so I don't know how I got it. I'm happy I got out of it. If anybody has it or thinks they might have it, don't hesitate to check. And if you have it badly, remdesivir is really the only medication that seems to work to clear the lungs. So be aware of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Steve and Kimbrough. You still there? And thank you. I see Herbert's been listening. It's so nice to have you. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're very welcome. I love listening to both of you do your dance, and I learned a lot, and I'm sure people who are watching are learned. And Cindy, you do an amazing job hosting your show, and you have excellent choice in guests, and this was really great. So thanks for hanging out in the Pod Brother Nation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Yuval, for being here today. And thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Cindy. I can't wait to work with you again and see you again. You're in New York when I'm in LA, but be in touch.
Cindy, where can we find you real quick? Where can we find you?
CindyMarinangel.com. CindyMarinangel.com has a lot of different things on there. And I'll be here every Wednesday